Hello, folks. I bet you didn't bet you'd see us back on the airwaves this soon. It is Saturday midday. We are recording a guerrilla podcast / YouTube episode for everybody because, of course, if you haven't heard by now, the top 3 bouts of UFC 279, which is going down tonight, have all 3 of them have been reshuffled. So I'm Michael Hansen. That's Mark Prio in front of the art, and Omar Artola, of course, in front of the heavy bag, kind of skipping over our usual intros because we're going to get right into this. This is going to be sort of a mini-sode for you guys, talking about, breaking down, predicting, and picking these 3 reshuffled welterweight bouts for UFC 279. So, real quick, the main event was supposed to be Nate Diaz versus Khamzat Chimaev, of course. Co-main event was supposed to be Tony Ferguson versus Jingliang at 170 pounds. And the bout before the co-main was supposed to be Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez, both of whom are welterweight fighters. Kevin Holland, of course, a rather new entrant to 170 pounds. But just for clarification, that bout between Holland and D-Rod was going to be a catchweight at 180 pounds, so floating between welterweight and middleweight. So the fight order, the matchups now that things have been reshuffled, all because Mr. Khamzat Chimaev weighed in about 8 pounds overweight. The main event will now be Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. The co-main will be Chimaev versus Kevin Holland. And then Jingliang and Daniel Rodriguez have agreed to fight. So let us first talk about this new main event between. Do you guys want to say anything about Chimaev missing weight or anything like that?
The absolute shit show that was the last 24 hours. Jesus.
Mark,
I would hate to have been anybody working at the UFC for the last 24 hours.
It's true.
That must have been the most stressful day ever for everybody.
Yeah, this was insane. And the way that it dragged out yesterday, too, like, the hours just kept ticking by. And, you would have, at maybe, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock it was, we had, okay, it's going to be Nate and Tony. And then, 45 minutes later, it was well, actually, no one's agreeing to anything, so, we don't really know. And then next thing you know, it's, 10 minutes before friggin' ceremonial weigh-ins, and still no fights have been announced. So the whole thing was just, wild following it throughout the day. And then we didn't even say the night before how the presser gets scratched because they're fighting in the back. Just want to note, your boy said that Chimaev and Nate would probably try to fight each other at the presser, and I guess it started with Holland, but eventually I was kind of right there. But yeah, this is insanity. We got a brand new card. It was pretty damn convenient that we had 6 welterweights at the top of this thing, and that 2 of them were already fighting at 180, so that we had someone for Chimaev to fight here. But we end up with a card that I actually like better than the previous card. Tony and Nate has the potential to be a classic. It's 2 lightweight legends, 2 guys who are similar in a lot of different ways, and it's a fight that feels like it should have happened by now, and we finally get it. So, and to me, it's better than any fight that was on the original card. I like Tony and Nate more than any of those original fights. So I love that. Chimaev and Holland, while obviously it's a step down for Chimaev coming off of Gilbert Burns, it's still kind of a fun fight. It has some bad blood. It has some interesting angles. And then you get Leach being the man and stepping up fighting a guy who's 8 pounds heavier than him in D-Rod, which we got to give him some credit for. And I'm sure UFC threw him some dough. They probably threw everyone some dough yesterday other than Khamzat Chimaev. So
they must have spent all the money yesterday. All the money.
But I'm more into this card than the last card. And I'll just say on Khamzat, it seemed like Dana was very cool with it, so who knows what the fucking details are. Who knows how shady and how long they've known about this and we're ready to rejigger all this. As Omar has said, there's definitely a tinfoil hat way to look at this thing. But Chimaev, making a mockery and laughing like it's no big deal that he missed weight by 8 pounds is not a great look. And you could tell that the crowd did not respond well because he went from being, who has thus far been a very popular guy, to getting legitimate heat and being booed at that weigh-in. So you could tell people didn't really appreciate the way that he handled all that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I thought he handled it like a real dick, to be honest. Apparently the whole story is that his body started doing weird things, shutting down, I'm assuming, seizing, or, not seizing, but like having the shakes and other, cramping and other sort of symptoms that you get from a bad weight cut. And a doctor came in and told him that he had to stop cutting weight. And he's like, I can still do it, which he probably could have, but I guess it was, first of all, it was bad enough that they called the doctor in the first place. So there's that. And then the doctor made his determination. So it is what it is. Chimaev shouldn't be that goddamn big if he's going to fight at 170. He should figure out his weight.
It's very convenient that he happened to stop at 179 when there was someone on the card at 179 for him to fight. Like, it's not like he kept going, got to 175. It's like they were almost like, hold on, maybe we'll just have you fight Kevin Holland.
Well, so it seems like they stopped him, though. They stopped him, and it's possible that he went up.
My point is what his weight happened to be right when they stopped him is intriguing to me.
Yeah, it's the tinfoil. I mean, it's the whole thing, and we said this just right before, that this is a very WWE way for this bullshit to have happened. I mean, this is ridiculous. There's a backstage brawl that they're now trying to they're trying to really sell us that there's no footage of this brawl. I call the absolute bullshit. Embedded basically has a baby leash attached to themselves and the fighters that they have on the videos. They don't leave their side.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So they didn't do that on Embedded, the 4th episode of Embedded, so I didn't even finish it. How dare them?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the Embeddeds yet. I got to try to watch. I probably won't be able to, but who am I kidding? I'll go right back to tending to children when I finish this.
But yeah, Chimaev didn't seem at all like, to take any real responsibility for it. He just sort of shrugged it off like it wasn't that serious. He weighed in and said that's not that bad, and then flipped off all the cameras, and then got to the weigh-ins and was still acting like, like he just did a line and is like losing his mind. I don't know. He lost a lot of fans.
Blaming it on Darren Till as if it was some big joke.
He lost a lot of fans. A lot of fans in a very, very short amount of time. I don't think we've seen somebody become the heel that quickly overnight like that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he may have lost fans who think of him in a positive light, who like him, but this is making everybody more famous. This is making Chimaev more famous. This is, bad press is good press. Bad press is still press.
The infamy
this is a huge story. Everyone's talking about it. We are having a guerrilla podcast just to talk about it.
I get your point, but I think he would have gotten more fame from beating Nate Diaz than from anything that he's going to do on
interesting
overall.
Dana White also did not look like he was fucking with him the other day when they were doing the weigh-ins. Like, Dana White's usually very smiley and like giving people handshakes and pounds and good luck, and he gave Chimaev a handshake. I don't even think he looked at him, and he just went about his business. Like, Dana White was not fucking with that kid yesterday, and I don't blame him. He was being a real dick about it.
Interesting. All right, let's get into these. You want to work up? We'll finish with the main event?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
So let's talk about Kevin Holland. No. Li Jingliang versus Daniel Rodriguez. At whatever weight it's officially at. Is it at 180, I guess?
They're calling it a catch weight. Yeah, they're calling it a catch weight, which
obviously
is
they've
weird
already weighed in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure at this point, even though the Leech weighed in at welterweight, at the welterweight limit, I'm sure at this point they're probably similar sized guys.
Yeah, I mean, but you have a guy who weighed in at 171 fighting a guy who weighed in at 179, and now they're both rehydrating. That's what it is. So whatever that
cut is very different too.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, who's taking it?
Go for it, Mark.
All right. So we got new odds, obviously, on all three of these fights. On this one, Daniel Rodriguez is the favorite. He is minus 155. The Leech is plus 130. This one's tough to pick, honestly. It's a really well-booked fight. It feels like a fight that would have made sense from the jump. All these fights do, honestly.
Yep.
Way more sense.
D-Rod is going to carry a 2 or 3 inch reach advantage, depending where you look. Of course, as we've mentioned, he will have that 8-pound weight advantage. But I got to say, looking at him on the scale, he just looks like a guy who didn't cut as much as usual. Like, he doesn't look at all like someone who said, like, okay, I'm fighting at 180 instead of 170. Let me bulk up. Let me put on some size. Like, he just looked like a slightly less in shape version of his usual self. So And that makes sense considering the late notice of the original booking with Kevin Holland, that it's not like he could bulk up. He just didn't really have to cut. So I actually think the weight is not a huge factor here. When they faced off, they looked like they were pretty much the same size guys. So obviously I give credit to Lee for accepting the fight, but I don't think it's going to be a huge factor. And I'm going to go with the Leech for a lot of the same reasons that I was going to go with Holland. You know, D-Rod hasn't fought in a while. He's coming off multiple hand injuries. I do expect some rust, and Lee has been active and looking good. And he's been training for the highest profile fight of his life against Tony Ferguson. So I just think Lee is coming into this one from a better place right now. And I could see D-Rod maybe look clean because his boxing is very clean. I could see him look good in round one as Lee tries to figure him out and win that round just based on volume. But I think Lee does figure him out. I trust him more right now. He's more explosive. He has the bigger shots of the two. He has had the more impressive showings in my book thus far. And I just think he's going to manage to hurt D-Rod at least a couple times as this fight goes on. I don't know if it's going to be to the point that he's able to finish him. I debated picking that. I think I'm going to land on it seeing the cards, but I just think as we get past that first round, the bigger shots start to come from Lee. D-Rod doesn't have as much success volume-wise, and Lee takes a 29-28 UD.
Omar?
First of all, justice for my man Li Jingliang. The man had a beautiful blue with red pinstripe suit, custom fitted, tailored to the T. Mike, you know the feeling. You know the feeling of picking up that fresh pressed, ready-made for you suit.
Nothing like it.
And then these fucking chooches just ruined the kid's moment.
They did.
Couldn't walk out, couldn't show off. It's terrible. Justice for my man Li Jingliang. That's number one.
I bet it was nicer
Number
than
two.
any suit I've ever put on. I wonder how much he spent on it. You know, like what if he spent what if he dropped like $1,000 on this fucking suit?
Dude, all he's got to
Probably
do is
more,
win.
man.
He can put that thing on in the post fight and say,
Yeah, we're talking.
got my suit on anyway. Couldn't stop
agree.
me from busting out the suit.
Second of all, Li Jingliang is my man. I love me some Leech. His right hand is killer. I absolutely think he'll be able to land it on D-Rod. I will be going with the KO in this one. I'm going to go with a third round, late KO. And justice for my man Li Jingliang. You better get him a suit. You better buy him a suit. Get him a coupon. Get him a free suit.
Dude, I wish that either he spoke English or I could understand Chinese, because he seems like he is a genuinely funny and entertaining guy. Like, even through the translations in the cage a lot, I'm like, this guy seems like the man. And then did you see the backstage video yesterday? Once him and Tony knew they weren't going to fight each other, and they're, like, hugging it out. And then Tony steps away, and there's a bunch of wires that he's stepping over, and Leach is going, no, be careful, be careful.
Oh, my God, I haven't seen that.
For people who don't know, Tony infamously freaking injured himself tripping over a wire backstage.
That was
He
one of the,
walks around with
4 times
sunglasses
that the Khabib
on.
fight got canceled.
Yeah, that was cracking me up. He seems like he's a funny dude.
Yeah, he does
That's
seem
funny.
like a dope guy.
I got to try to find that moment. Okay.
Mike, who you got?
I think we're unanimous here. I'm taking the Leech. I'm going to piggyback off Mark's point. I think he's going to be the more athletic guy in there, the stronger guy in there. I like his power. And, I think he seems like he's been on point. And he's, I think the suit is a character in and of itself this fucking week. They're gonna make another. I'm gonna see another one of those, like The Perfect Fighter, and like all the arrows pointing, and it's gonna one of them is gonna be like the Leech's suit. You know what I mean? And
That's great.
But I think that's a sign that he was just ready to shine this weekend, and I think he's gonna have a great fight. And but D-Rod's a super durable guy. He's never been finished in his career at all in any way, shape, or form. So I think he's going to possibly hurt Daniel Rodriguez, but ultimately not finish him. That's going to be more to D-Rod's credit. So I'm going to go with Lee by unanimous decision. Okay, let's move on to the new co-main event of UFC 279.2. which is going to be
0.2.
Khamzat Chimaev versus Kevin Holland. Omar, why don't you take this one first? Give us your new prediction and new pick.
For 5 rounds, for those who don't know.
That's correct. 5-round fight at 180 pounds. Catch weight.
Sounds like Kevin Holland wasn't doing it unless it was 5 rounds, at least. This is a fantastic fight. This fight makes way more sense. This, to me, doesn't seem like a straight murder, kind of like the other one did. And I love, you know me, I love me some tea. And so it seems like these guys have some beef, and supposedly the word is that Chimaev done put a foot through Kevin Holland's chest, and now they have a chance to really settle the score. So it'll be nice, and hopefully this doesn't turn. I wouldn't imagine with these two guys it would be, but I hope it doesn't turn into one of those we've talked so much shit, now we're both scared of knocking each other out kind of fights. But I can't imagine with these two guys that that's what it'll turn into. It's a fantastic fight, and I've talked about it now at this point with a few people. And I really have this feeling deep inside that this fight's going to get wild. It's going to get taken down. It's going to get scrambly. And I really think Kevin Holland's going to catch something. He's one of the best opportunistic submission artists that we have right now. He may not be necessarily the most adept at getting there from A to Z, but if he's put in a position where he's got a chance, he's going to snatch it up. And he's very good at it, and his limbs allow for it. So I'm going to go with Kevin Holland by submission, and I think it'll happen round 2.
Wow.
You heard it here first. The craziest pick of the night.
Let me throw this out there. My man Omar right now is getting a lot of love in these comments. But he killed it last week. If he just called this correctly, we are going to have to bow down in these comments next, or the people commenting on this one after we see these results. Wow, that was a ballsy selection. I was about to tell you the reasons why you can't ignore Kevin Holland, despite the fact that you have to pick Chimaev, and you're over here fucking picking Kevin Holland. Wow.
That's how we do it over here.
All right, so Chimaev is minus 560. Obviously not the enormous favorite he was of 1,100 against Nate, but still pretty big, 560. Kevin Holland plus 410. To me, this one is probably a foregone conclusion, considering the wrestling deficiencies we've seen from Kevin Holland and the insane level of wrestling that Chimaev brings to the table. But I'm going to point out a few different reasons why this fight is interesting, and obviously Omar agrees. Number one, let's look at Chimaev's recent opponents. You have Gilbert Burns, who is 5'10", with a 71-inch reach, and who used to fight at 55. You have Jingliang, who is 6 foot, with a 72-inch reach, pretty much same as Burns, who's like an average-sized 170-pounder. Now, you have Kevin Holland, who is 6'3", so 3 to 5 inches taller than those two guys, with an 81-inch reach, 10 inches longer than those guys, who used to fight at 85. So this is a significantly larger human than the guys Chimaev has been fighting recently. And I know Chimaev has fought middleweights before. His early run in the UFC was at middleweight. But they weren't guys on a Kevin Holland level. They were significantly lower level than a Kevin Holland. So that is interesting to me. And on top of that, whereas Nate is not a one-shot finishing threat that Chimaev had to really worry about, Kevin Holland is. So while I still think the pick is Chimaev, Kevin Holland has that chance. Like, he still has very underrated power. He hits you with awkward shots from awkward angles. You don't see them coming, and you will get put down. And he can also, as Omar said, snatch a sub with lightning speed. I feel like he doesn't get credit for a lot of the things that he does. He is a super opportunistic and slick grappler. So that finisher's chance of him finding something does exist. And on top of that, another thing is he seems to have already worked his way into Chimaev's head a bit. And I'm sure he's going to be talking plenty more in that cage. So it'll be interesting to see how Chimaev handles that, because if he forgoes the wrestling and just decides to stand and scrap with Kevin Holland, it could get interesting. It really could. So with all that said, I have to pick Chimaev simply because of the gap in the wrestling. I just wanted to make sure people weren't ignoring the chance of Kevin Holland, but Omar did that job for me by coming straight out and picking him. Chimaev, to me, should be able to take this to the mat without a ton of resistance. Holland defends really well. He's not easy to finish, so it could take multiple takedowns, could take some time. But I think that's probably what we get. I think that a beating accumulates, and eventually we get a stoppage. I'll say round 3 TKO for Chimaev. But as I said in the beginning of this, he's half the favorite against Holland that he was against Nate. So they see it too. There's some interesting wrinkles here, and we'll see if Kevin Holland can shock the world.
I love this matchup. I also love Omar's balls in actually picking Kevin Holland, which I don't have. Yeah, man. I think the attributes of Kevin Holland at 170 pounds are what makes this matchup interesting and are what make Kevin Holland such an interesting 170-pounder to follow overall. And I think that Chimaev is going to have a more difficult time bullying Kevin Holland than he has had previous opponents. He stood and banged a lot with Gilbert Burns, but to Mark's point, he was, quite literally punching down at Kevin Burns, and that's not going to be the case with Kevin Holland. And I would love to see Kevin Holland just light him up, and to show us all that he's human and he can be beatable. I mean, Gilbert Burns hurt him. Gilbert Burns dropped him
multiple times for sure.
So let's go. I do think this is going to be a war. I hope it's a war. But with his wrestling, Chimaev is the kind of guy who wins rounds. So I think he's a lock for the W. I'm going to go with Chimaev by UD, but it is going to be fight of the night. Oh, by the way, I wanted
to... Go ahead, Mike. Finish up.
I was thinking about this in the car today. I think we should start picking fight of the night.
Yeah, I mean, we say it a lot of the time anyway. So
we do, but kind of quasi-officially, kind of like how we do our picks.
I'm down.
So about it.
I'm going to start it off right here and say that Holland Chimaev is going to be the fight of the night.
I'm going to go Nate and Tony.
I'll stay with Kevin Holland and Chimaev. I think that one's going to be a banger.
Omar, before we move on, I have a question for you. Are you just simply incapable of picking against Kevin Holland? If he was fighting Izzy, would you be picking Kevin Holland?
Hang on.
Fighting John Jones.
Here's I was going to add that Kevin Holland's striking is also underrated, right? I trust in his opportunistic submissions, right? If he gets held down in guard from bottom, I don't necessarily think that he's going to snatch up some crazy shit right from there. But if he gets put in a position where he can snatch a neck up, or if he sprawls really deep and he can get a Darce choke or something like that, I absolutely see that happening. And Chimaev is wild enough that he could give himself up with those kind of chokes. But his striking is also very underrated. The man is lanky as shit. There's knees up the middle all day for Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, if you watch him as well, he's also very good at using his arm, his hand to pull the arm down of his opponent and then either hit him with a counter or with a power hand or a hook or whatever the case is. But he's very, very good at using his lead hand to pull down and then attack. Chimaev is a very brawler style, especially now. I'd imagine this man is out of his mind. He doesn't look like somebody who's calm and collected, prepared to fight. He looks like somebody. He looks like Drago right now. Like he's just crazy. And Kevin Holland, again, one of these guys that, like we've talked about before, may not look the most technical. It's not the prettiest. It's very much a Kevin Holland style that he presents, but it's very effective. He does move around. He does hit corners. His striking is very good for what he presents. And I think along with his opportunistic submissions, I think he's got more chances to win than not. Short of Chimaev holding him in guard, which, again, I don't see a boring fight like that happening. But short of that being the case, I think Kevin Holland has more shots to win in this than people give him credit for. Okay. So, again, second round submission, baby.
I'm excited.
So, again, if he was fighting Izzy, would you be picking Kevin Holland?
If he was fighting Francis Ngannou, would you be picking Kevin Holland?
So Izzy doesn't really give up that many opportunities. Izzy's a lot more conservative when it comes to the way he fights. So probably not.
Break that. I was just curious if you are capable of picking
probably not. Probably not. But
all right, let's move on to this main event.
I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right. It will be fucking awesome.
All right, boys, let's move on to this new main event of the evening, UFC 279. Now, Diaz versus Ferguson. That's right. Nate Diaz taking on El Cucuy Tony Ferguson at 170 pounds. This is easily a fight that we would have loved to see maybe 5 years ago at 155 pounds, but it's happening now. These guys are both must-see TV. They always have been. They always will be. And we are getting this treat tonight. So here we go. Nate Diaz, Tony Ferguson. Mark, why don't you take this one first? Give us your new prediction of this matchup and your new pick.
Before you go, doesn't this feel like a moment from Step Brothers where like, you imagine if we had this when we were in our 20s? Yeah. Better. Now we have it when we're in our 30s, baby.
Yes, accurate. So the odds are super tight. Tony is the favorite, minus 130. Oh, wow. Nate is plus 105, so almost even money on Nate. I love this fight. As I said, I'm so much more into this card now simply because of this one fight, and I actually think these guys are going to give us a classic. I really do. I could see this thing going all 25, being close throughout, both guys bleeding and spent at the end of it, crowd giving them a standing ovation. I could absolutely see that. That's what I'm envisioning here. On paper, this is a really close fight. They both have filthy jiu-jitsu. That probably cancels each other out, though I do hope we get some exchanges down there because I would love to see it. They're both great scramblers. Neither one's going to really look to control with wrestling, you wouldn't think. They're both going to walk forward, both going to look to do damage all fight long. They're going to stay in each other's face. They'll both try to kind of establish that alpha dog dominance, so it'll be interesting to see who's able to do that, if either of them. It's really just a great matchup. They're very similar. I do think Tony's pressure could end up being a big factor here simply because lately we haven't got to see it as much because he's fighting so many guys with big power as of late, Gaethje, Oliveira, Chandler, and so on. Whereas here, that's not something that Nate Diaz has. So I think we're going to see Tony stalking Nate as much as he can, really trying to stay in his face, get in tight, throw those elbows that he's known for. But at the same time, Nate kind of welcomes that, and he'll play right along with it. Yeah. And though each of these guys are maybe a little bit past their peak, I think it is Nate who is the better boxer at this point. Can Tony's style overcome that boxing advantage? I'm sure it can, but I think Nate is going to be able to hit Tony a lot. I think he is the cleaner of the two. I also expect Nate to be better conditioned as things go into round 4 and round 5.
Oh, really?
As much as Tony has like legendary conditioning, he was training for 3. He's getting older. I trust Nate more late. Could be wrong on it, but that's how I feel, that I would trust Nate more as we get into 4 and 5. It's really a coin toss for me overall, and this is kind of how I land. I don't think either guy is going to get knocked out or submitted. I think it's going on the cards. I think it's going to be close, likely 48-47, one way or the other. And in a world where these guys see the cards, I do think it's Nate who edges it out. But I keep coming back to what I think is the X factor of this fight and the thing that I can't get out of my head, which is that Nate Diaz's face bleeds more easily than almost anybody in MMA at this point in time because of all the scar tissue he has. And Tony Ferguson has literal knives on his elbows and has made a career of cutting people. Like, you remember those collages they used to make of during his run of all the faces that he just butchered. Like, he is known
for after.
So Tony ripping Nate's face open and winning this via doctor stoppage on a cut, even in a fight that maybe he's losing, is a very, very real possibility. And that makes me afraid to bet this fight. It makes me afraid to pick Nate, even though if you told me that won't happen, I'd pick him. So I think if it makes the cards, it's a Nate UD, or I think it's a doctor stoppage for Tony. I'm literally 50-50 on it, but
that's literally my exact thing too.
I don't trust Nate to not bleed everywhere. So I guess if you're putting a gun to my head, I think it's probably more likely that he bleeds everywhere and that we don't make it to the cards, even if he's winning the fight. So I guess that's my prediction here. But if we get there, I think Nate wins.
Senor Artola.
How many stitches do you think we're gonna have by the end of the night?
In this one fight?
Just this one human being. I'm not even talking about Tony. I'm talking about Nate. Just Nate.
Tony might have some as well.
Agreed. But how many do you think Nate's gonna have?
Who knows, man? Who knows?
20,
I'd love to
25.
see it. Like when it happened with Jorge and they stopped it for the cut, it was such a buzzkill. Like I really would love to see us get a whole 25 out of this thing, but I don't know.
The like top half of his face was literally just like falling off.
Oh, I know.
It wasn't great. And it's the same spot over and over again. The man is like putty at this point. He's like put back together so many times it just doesn't stay the same anymore.
Correct.
He's absolutely right about everything Mark said. He's absolutely right. I'm still going with Nate Diaz. And I think his jab is perhaps underrated. I'm not sure how people feel about it or even talk about it, but his jab is absolutely amazing. He uses it more than I think most people use it in MMA, which I think is crazy. But I think he pieces him up. And I think that Tony tries to get inside of Nate Diaz's striking, and I think he finds it very difficult to do so. Tony Ferguson likes pressure, but Nate Diaz is a very good boxer, and if he comes in prepared, warmed up, all the things that Nate Diaz has said has caused him trouble in the past getting started, I think we'll see Tony Ferguson get peppered for quite some time. I don't think that he's going to get knocked out. I don't think that Nate Diaz is going to be able to put that much together at once in order to knock out Tony, and I don't think he one-shot kills him. So I'm going to go with Nate by UD.
Okay. I think I'm going to be the contrarian on this one. I'm going to take Tony, and here's my main thing. Well, let me back up first. I agree. I think Nate is the superior boxer. And while I don't think that this is going to be a fight like what Nate did against Leon, what Nick Diaz did against Anderson, I don't think this is going to be a fight where you see Nate Diaz, open a folding chair in the middle of the mat and like sit down and like light a blunt and just like, and you're like, what is he doing? Because I don't know. He's just trying to play a mind game with this guy who's clearly like outmatching him at this point in his career, a la Leon Edwards. And I don't think he's going to be that intimidated by Tony to the point where he's going to try to be playing those mind games. I think we're going to see Nate Diaz fight in this fight, like legitimately, even though he looks like he didn't really prepare much because when he thought he was fighting Chimaev. So I think we're going to see Nate fight, but I think what I see from both Diaz brothers at this later stage in their careers is just they get plagued by inactivity. Like what Nick Diaz did against Anderson, against Carlos Condit to an extent. It's like, man, he would fucking win if he just fucking went. If he'd fucking fought more. Too much pointing, too much taunting, too much inactivity. And Tony Ferguson, on the other hand, thinking about this stylistic matchup, Tony Ferguson has always been a pretty active fighter. So I see this going the distance, but I see Tony being the one who wins 48-47, taking 3 or 4 rounds, mostly because of activity, of accumulated damage, and that is my prediction. I think it is possible if things are going really well for Nate and he's really winning boxing exchanges. That's sort of that typical Diaz win of kind of overwhelming the opponent, bringing them into this sort of quicksand scenario of blows just kind of piling up. I don't see that happening at this point, maybe 5 years ago, 3 years ago with Nate Diaz, but against Tony Ferguson, I think the damage is going to accumulate. Tony's going to make it into his kind of fight, his kind of scrap, and we're going to see his hand raised by UD at the end.
Fair, super fair. Omar, did you think close decision? I know you said decision. Are you thinking like 48-47, or you think something clear?
I think it'll be pretty clear. I actually see Nate maybe getting probably the later rounds, probably not the first 2, but I see him winning 3, 4, and 5 at the very minimum.
Fair. Yeah, I feel like I didn't make a real pick.
Really?
I mean, because I went with Tony in the end, just because I can't ignore the cut, even though I think Nate wins if it doesn't get stopped by a cut. But
yeah, Tony by TKO.
I don't know. That's really my thoughts.
Doctor stoppage.
Yeah.
Cut stoppage or whatever.
Yeah.
Nate does look bigger than him too, right? Like taller and shit. He's They seem to not necessarily be the same
Tony's
size.
got to be like 5'10", and Nick is listed at 6 foot, I think.
I was gonna say I think Nate might be like 2 inches.
It just seems
Looking right
bigger
now.
and wider, I guess.
Nate 6 foot. Tony 5'11". So yeah, it's only one.
Oh, they're only right
The reach
there.
is pretty much identical. I think Tony has it by half an inch.
Well, I got to say, guys, I am so much more hyped for all
For sure.
3 of these fights now
Yep.
than I
100%.
was 24 hours ago.
Agree totally.
And by the way, huge props to the UFC for pulling this shit together. I mean, yesterday in the afternoon, the 3 of us were texting. We're like, "This is probably it's done. It's over. This is gonna get the whole card's gonna get canceled."
I
They
wish
lost
that
the
they-
main and co-main.
We shades of UFC 151 all over it. All
Which
over
is
it.
crazy because you just mentioned it on the
I
pod
know.
this week. For a second there, I thought we were going to maybe get like a $40 or $50 pay-per-view just as like a nod to the fans. But then as soon as I saw the 3 fights they were able to put together, I was like, oh, fuck, they're still charging full money for this one for sure.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, we did it. We got it in. Let's get this thing uploaded. Hopefully the people see it in time to click it. Mm-hmm. Give us some feedback if you watch it today, guys. We'd love to get the comments. Who should we? Can we shout out our boy real quick? Hang on, before we end this.
Oh yeah, what's that guy's name?
A couple of
This
guys.
What
New
is this
World
guy?
Orbit was one of
New
them.
World Orbit. Some great comments from this guy. Even some advice. Super appreciate it. Paolo Barbaro just gave us a great comment. A few more guys on here. We love it. Keep coming with the comments. We appreciate it.
Yeah, man. If
Absolutely.
you guys see this before the event tonight, comment with your picks of these 3 new reshuffled bouts.
Dope.
Awesome.
All
Well,
right.
I got to get
We'll
out
be
of
back
here and
next week.
get back to the family for a nice Saturday. But I cannot wait for these fights tonight. Oh my god!
So
All right, boys. I'll see you in
Bye, boys.
midweek.
Adios.
Adios. Peace.
Peace.